54% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. Not during a recession, not during COVID, right now in 2026, with the economy supposedly doing fine. And here's the part that's going to mess with your head. A huge chunk of these people are making six figures. Yeah, you heard that right. Six figures, and still one missed paycheck away from disaster. So let's talk about it, because if you've ever felt like you're working harder than ever and somehow falling further behind, you are not imagining it. You're not bad with money, you're not lazy, you're not making dumb decisions with your Starbucks order. Something bigger is going on, and honestly, most people never stop to ask why. Here's the wild part. Back in 2021, only 42% of Americans said they were living paycheck to paycheck. According to Ramsey Solutions' 2026 State of Personal Finance Report, that number has climbed to 54% in just 5 years. That's not a small shift. That's tens of millions of people sliding from doing okay to barely holding on. And it's not slowing down. Now, you might be thinking, okay, paycheck to paycheck, that's poor people, right? People who don't earn enough. That's the story we've all been told. Work harder, get a better job, problem solved. Except that story is kind of a lie. Research from WealthView's 2026 finance data shows that about 40% of people earning over $100,000 a year are still living paycheck to paycheck. Let that sink in for a second. $100,000 a year and still broke by the time the next check hits. So if it's not about how much you make, what is it about? Here's where it gets interesting, and honestly, a little infuriating. Lambda Finance broke down the data by income tier for 2026, and the fastest growing group living paycheck to paycheck isn't low-income families. It's people making $100,000 to $200,000 a year. Their words, not mine. Housing costs alone have basically eaten 7 years' worth of income gains for that group. 7 years, gone, absorbed by rent and mortgage payments before it even hits your checking account. Think about it like this. Imagine you get a raise every single year straight for 7 years. Feels good, right? Now imagine someone's been quietly taking that entire raise every year before you even see it and handing it straight to your landlord or your mortgage lender. That's basically what's happened to millions of American households. The raise happened, you just never got to keep it. And it's not just housing. Healthcare and childcare are doing the same thing. Combined, housing, healthcare, and childcare now eat up 65% of the median American household's income, according to that same Lambda Finance analysis, up from 51% back in 2019. So in less than a decade, the basics, just the stuff you need to survive and function, went from taking about half your paycheck to nearly 2/3 of it. That's not lifestyle creep. That's the floor rising under everybody's feet. Now, here's the part that really gets me. We love to blame ourselves for this. Oh, I should have saved more. I shouldn't have gotten that coffee. But the Federal Reserve tracks something called the $400 emergency expense test. Basically, can you cover a surprise $400 bill with cash or savings without going into debt? As of the most recent Fed survey of household economics data, roughly 1 in 3 American households can't. 1 in 3. That's not a spending habit problem. That's a structural one. And look, I'm not saying budgeting doesn't matter, it does, but when rent alone is swallowing 1/3 of your paycheck before you've bought a single grocery item, no amount of cutting back on takeout is going to fix that math. This is bigger than any one person's spreadsheet. Here's the kicker though, and this is the part almost nobody talks about. Even with all this financial stress, Americans are still stressed about money every single day. Ramsey's data shows 53% of people now say they worry about money daily, up from 44% just 5 years ago. So we're not just broke, we're anxious and broke. And that combo is brutal, because financial stress makes it even harder to think clearly about money, which just keeps the cycle going. But wait, because there's something in this data that actually flips the whole narrative, and it's not what you'd expect. The personal savings rate in the U.S. dropped to just 4% earlier this year. That means the average household is only managing to set aside around $200 a month. $200. That's your entire buffer between I'm fine and I'm in a real crisis. One car repair, one ER visit, 1 month with a slightly higher heating bill, and that cushion is gone. So who's actually behind all this? It's easy to point fingers at individuals, but the real pressure is coming from somewhere else. Housing costs that have outpaced wage growth for years, healthcare costs that keep climbing no matter what, childcare that in a lot of cities costs more than college tuition used to. These aren't personal failures, they're systemic squeezes, and everyday working people are the ones absorbing the impact. Meanwhile, corporate profits and executive pay have kept climbing right through all of it. You're not losing the game because you're playing it wrong, you're losing because the board's tilted. Now, before you spiral into total doom about this, here's some actual good news buried in the data. Ramsey's report also found that 53% of Americans now say they follow a monthly budget, up from 47% in 2021. And get this, the biggest jump in budgeting is coming from Gen Z and middle-income households. So even in the middle of all this pressure, people are adapting. They're getting sharper with their money even when the system isn't making it easy. So what do you actually do with all this? First, stop blaming yourself for a trend that's hitting more than half the country, including people who make double or triple what you make. That guilt isn't productive, and honestly, it's not accurate. Second, if you can, start building even a tiny buffer, not the 3 to 6 months of expenses advice you hear all the time, because let's be real, that's not realistic for most people right now. Even $500 or $1,000 saved up changes the game because it means one surprise expense doesn't turn into a credit card spiral. And third, pay attention to where your money's actually going, not to shame yourself, but because in an economy like this, every dollar you can redirect towards stability matters more than it used to. At the end of the day, more than half of America is in the same boat you might be in right now. That's not a comforting fact by itself, but it does mean this isn't some personal failure you need to hide or feel ashamed of. It's a nationwide reality, and the more people understand what's actually driving it, the more pressure builds to actually fix it. Drop a comment below and let me know which stat hit you the hardest. Was it the housing cost eating 7 years of raises, or the fact that 100K earners are living paycheck to paycheck? I'd love to hear your take on this. If this video helped you make sense of what's really happening in the economy, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to spread this message to more people who need to hear it. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive. And share this with a friend or family member who's been stressing about money lately so they know they're not alone. And if you want to see exactly how to start building that $1,000 safety buffer even on a tight budget, stick around because that's exactly what we're breaking down in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.